Inside Crime is brought to you by Datera. The Datera drug deactivation system helps stop opioid misuse before it starts. With Datera, unused prescription opioids and other drugs are gone for good. I'm Angeline Hartman. I've spent my career as a journalist covering some of the worst crimes in history. My craft is storytelling. My passion is crime fighting. Now I'm bringing you more stories, candid conversations with crime victims, their families, and law enforcement. We'll journey together as we learn what happens inside crime. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Inside Crime. On today's episode, we're going to talk to my friend, retired Atlanta police detective Vince Velazquez. He retired from APD a few years ago, and one of the projects that keeps him busy these days is a hit television show. Vince Velazquez and his former partner, David Quinn, are the stars of a standout television show on the TV1 network. It's called ATL Homicide. It is a huge success, and I'm so happy about that because this show is very, very special to me. You see, the concept was born more than 10 years ago when I was at America's Most Wanted. Later, I brought all the players together and worked with my friend Sedge Torreson and his company WideNet Productions to bring the idea to life. ATL Homicide is awesome, and I'm proud to serve as a consulting producer on the show. I can tell you that right now, shooting for Season 2 is underway. They are in full production, getting ready. It's a very, very exciting time for everyone involved. Now, we're going to talk to both Vince and David here on Inside Crime, but today we'll start with Vince. And we're going to hear about his one case. Every detective has one, a case they can't forget. For Vince, his one case is an unsolved mystery about a child killer, and it still haunts him today. We'll also talk about a bizarre case that happened in 2005. You might remember this. A man on trial for rape escaped from police custody, and he went on a killing spree. It all began at the Fulton County Courthouse in downtown Atlanta. The city was on lockdown for 26 hours. Now, Vince played a key role in that case, so we'll get the fascinating inside story from him. But right now, let's start off with a little taste of ATL Homicide.
Atlanta is a sexy, beautiful city. But there's a dark side. We work hundreds of murders.
Homicide is like mental chess, and I'm just waiting for that mistake.
How many calls did you make to check on your wife?
When you tear away all the fibers and the fingerprints, at the end of the day, all you have is a story.
My friend, Vince Velazquez, welcome to Inside Crime.
Inside Crime. I love it. Thank you.
It's very exciting to have you here.
Thank you. Well, your family, so of course, why wouldn't I be here?
I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I mean, let's fill in the people. So does that make you my brother, my younger brother, my older brother?
Oh, I'm definitely not your younger brother. So,
what are you talking about?
Yeah, I'm way older than you. So how about I'm your older brother? We'll just call me your older brother.
All right. Well, so, I mean, I still remember the first time you called. I mean, it had to be
2000. 2001, 17 years ago, 18 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
You were just a puppy to
homicide. Baby detective.
So for people who don't know, I was a reporter in Atlanta, and you were a homicide detective looking for a little help on a case.
That's right.
And I don't know how, but somehow I picked up my phone one day and you were on the other end.
Yeah. I don't remember exactly how I got to you, but nobody was using the media kind of like they are today back then. It was kind of like, oh, you got to go through so many people. You got to call this person. You got to call public affairs, and I'm just like, okay, I'm already in a job that is a mountain of red tape to get phone records. And, we started doing that, or get this done or get that done. I just got so frustrated. I'm like, who could I call? Like, just let me get a number. And
and at the same time, I'm starting up this thing called Georgia's Most Wanted.
That's right. And I saw it on TV. And I was like, wow, I need to get my case on there. And I wish, I apologize. I don't remember exactly what case it was.
I apologize too.
But it was important enough for me to make that call. And I just said, you know what? I'm not going to call public affairs, and I'm not going to call the chief's office. I'm just going to try to reach you. And I did. And you were like, yeah, let's put this on TV. Mm-hmm. And I do remember getting some tips from it. And I started to think outside the box. I'm like, if I'm trying to reach an audience of people with information, what better place to go to than an organization that has an audience, the news.
Right.
It was a perfect combination.
And there it was. Then our family was born.
That's right. That's right. Georgia's Most Wanted helped out for sure.
You definitely were a big part of that. Those were my early reporter years, and it was a lot to start that up. Behind the scenes, not very, you're talking about starting out your homicide career and going through your hurdles. I was going through some of my own hurdles as a reporter, trying to, figure out my way in crime reporting. And so I look at it like we came up together.
Right. We did. We grew up together, and not knowing how much we would learn and how much, in the latter years, how much more we would work together, and how intertwined we were in the crime space. From your reporting side, from all the wonderful things that you've done since then, from National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. I've even worked with you on that. America's Most Wanted. I mean,
that's interesting, because some of the same cases that we worked on together in Atlanta, while I'm a local reporter, you're here as a homicide detective. Your early cases, I later brought that with me to America's Most Wanted.
That's
and
right.
We did it again.
We did it again. And interestingly enough, that case, that one I absolutely remember, and I know you do too. That's Nicole Smith. We are even though I'm retired, we're working on something right now that could just really blow the whole lid off of this case and put some, get some closure for the family on this thing. And I'm just, I'm praying. I have my fingers crossed, and maybe we'll do another special on this thing to really show all the work, not just I did on it, but a ton of people, including yourself, and America's Most Wanted, and how much press this case got. But that case right there, in particular, is a case that you covered on Georgia's Most Wanted a couple times, actually, and then America's Most Wanted, and got a ton of tips, national tips from people from Iowa, from all over the country. And I was just at APD the other day, and I walked into before I retired, I dedicated an entire shelf in the cold case room for Nicole Smith, because there's so many documents and binders and files for this case that it has to have its own space, so you can't walk into that room anybody can't walk into that room without looking to the left and asking, what case is that? Because there's no other case that has that much space in the file room at APD.
I just can't believe it hasn't been solved yet, and that is one of the cases that stays with me. Let's fill in our viewers. Nicole Smith.
Sure. So Nicole Smith, and like you, is a case that I think every detective has one that they just wish they could have solved before they retire. And for me, this is that case. In 1995, Nicole Smith was walking to school in the morning with her sister and some friends, and decided to go to the store. The sister and the friends went on to school, and so she took a shortcut through a wooded area, trying to get to school. And shortly thereafter, witnesses heard a girl scream and then heard 2 gunshots. Security from the nearby apartment complex ran into the woods and found Nicole Smith nude and killed, shot twice in the face. She was 15 years old. I'm sorry, she was 14. She was 14 years old. And that was 95. I had just started the police department. I remember that case. I remember hearing about it on the news, but I hadn't even started yet. I didn't start until September. This was June of 95. Now I'm in the academy. I remember seeing that case on the news. No idea whatever happened to the case. Fast forward 5 years later, I'm in homicide, and I realized that case never got solved.
Right.
And I'm like, wow, I remember this case from the news as a civilian, not even as a police officer. And then interestingly enough, in 2002, 2 years after I was in homicide, some tips came in. So I understood that, it was a case that it intrigued me from the beginning. And I think more so because she's just so young, and I learned that she was sexually assaulted. And I learned, I started to try to teach myself DNA, because DNA in 1995 was in its infancy,
right?
Literally. Back then, there was a DNA process to extract a profile called RFLP DNA. Outdated, So, and for RFLP DNA, you needed a large amount, but nevertheless, they got a profile in 1995. They had a profile. I started to learn about CODIS and what that was. CODIS is like basically, in layman's terms, it's a DNA database for offenders, people who have been to prison. And I started, not only am I learning homicide on regular cases, I'm catching cases all the time. I'm still going back to this case and I'm going, what can be done? What can I do to learn more about DNA? I started to think that, okay, I'm so overwhelmed with these other cases, I'm not sure I know enough about what to do with DNA. I don't know enough about what this means, and I had to put it down because I'm catching 12 murders a year by myself.
Wow.
And yes, in 2002, 2003. We fast forward to 2004, and the district attorney's office from Fulton County decided to create a multi-agency cold case squad, and they asked for volunteers, and I did. I raised my hand when nobody else would because people are scared to try new things, and I'm like, you know what? Cold cases are much harder to solve than hot cases, and I was having great success, but I wanted to challenge myself. So everybody was like, wait a minute, you're going to go and you're going to be assigned to the DA's office? Why are you doing that? I'm like, hey, listen, I'm trying to learn some things here. So God blessed us with a great prosecutor assigned to the cold case squad, Sheila Ross. And Sheila Ross headed the cold case squad before she came to the DA's office in San Francisco, and she had a wealth of knowledge of all things DNA. So she taught me so much about DNA. And I started to look at the Nicole Smith case, and I said,
because by this time, this is in the stack of cold cases.
It's obviously in the stack of, we had 1,400, we identified 1,400 open murders going back to the 40s, but
wow.
Workable murders, almost 1,000 cases. So with that said, we realized that we had to rework this DNA to modern standards, the RFLP DNA to modern standards for it to be uploaded into CODIS, because it wasn't. So that was done. So now we have the profile of the offender who raped and murdered Nicole Smith in the national DNA database.
Right.
Didn't hit.
So that means it didn't hit. That person's not in there.
He's not. He's never been swabbed. The offender's never been uploaded into the database. But we continue to look at the case. Just figuring out what we can do. So I was at home one night. Now we're up and running months into the cold case squad, and my phone is ringing off the hook, and I couldn't get to it. And I go to it, and I have like 4 or 5 missed calls from Sheila Ross. And I finally call her back. She goes, you're not going to believe what happened. We got a hit on the Nicole Smith case. So, of course, my thinking is, who is it? And she goes, we don't know. And again, I'm still learning. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? You got a hit. She goes, we got a forensic crime scene hit. And I knew what that meant. I'm like, what? She goes, yes.
Meaning there's been another crime, and it matches up to that other crime.
That's right. We have a young girl literally miles away, 2-3 miles away from where Nicole Smith was killed in 95. Now, this is 9 years later, almost to the day. It was in June, 9 years later, a 13-year-old girl walking home from a friend's house is pulled into the bushes by an offender, by a bad guy, and raped but not killed. That DNA from her rape kit matches the DNA from Nicole Smith's killer. So he's back. So now we're in full swing,
wow,
trying to get this guy. We got forensic artists doing sketches of what she thinks this guy looks like. And we got a profile now. We got a sketch of a black male, round glasses, gap tooth. And we and this thing went on for almost a year. We did billboards with this photograph on it. And now I'm getting to you. We finally, again, I'm like, Angeline, I need your help. We're not getting a hit here. This guy.
Now I'm at America's Most Wanted.
You're at America's Most Wanted. I'm like, okay, locally, we're not getting anything. We put this on the news locally. Nobody's called. They've called, but it's not, the same guy. We've swabbed a bunch of people. We've got no matches.
Time to go national.
It's time to go national. He's probably out of state. And that's when I called you.
I always wondered why. Do you think something happened that day? Like, he had killed Nicole Smith, and his second victim, I mean, it's pretty much the same routine there, but he let her go. What happened that day?
I think, this is just a theory, because you have to look at why did he kill Nicole Smith and why did he not kill this 13-year-old victim of the
Maybe
rape.
It's the other way around. Maybe he didn't mean to kill Nicole Smith.
No, he meant to kill Nicole Smith. He shot her twice in the face. Mm-hmm. There's absolutely no question about what his intent was that day. Yeah. But my belief, and has always been based especially on the second victim, is that Nicole Smith knew her killer. He was from that area. I think he realized that he can't let her go after he raped her because she could identify him, and he killed her. And I think, obviously, the victim that lived, the victim 9 years later, did not know her offender. She got to look at his face, and if she knew him, she would have said, hey, it's so-and-so. And he knew that he didn't know her, so he felt comfortable in getting away and not being identified. And I do believe to this day that's why he killed Nicole Smith. So, and we did everything from pulling records of every child that was late for school in her school that day, every high school student that was tardy or didn't show up in school that day. We looked at DMV records. We looked at everybody that was stopped by the police. Every possible thing you can think of, because we were confident that this offender is from the neighborhood where Nicole Smith grew up. Right. And I'm confident that when we find who this guy is, we're going to look back, and his name is in there somewhere, because there's thousands of names associated with this case, thousands. It's literally a needle in a haystack. And I'm confident that he's from that neighborhood. And once he's revealed, people are going to go, oh my God.
He's been here this whole...
We know him.
Yeah. Why do you think there was 9 years in between? Like, he left and came back, or were there other crimes related we don't know about? What is that?
We had criminal profilers, 2 different ones, look at this case. We considered he was in the military. We considered that he couldn't have been in prison, because if he was in prison, he would have been swabbed and we would have had a match to a name. So we know that's not the case. Anywhere, nationally, he could have been in prison in Colorado and we would have got a hit, because this profile is not only in the Georgia database, it's in the national database. There's a lot of theories. My gut tells me that there was so much attention to this case from the beginning to the middle, and especially from when the second victim surfaced, that we educated him. I think we educated him, and I think he's offended, and I think he's used a condom. I think when the smoke settles, when we finally identify this guy, we're going to find a bunch of rape victims.
Other victims.
Either in Atlanta, the area, or in other states. But I think we did national TV, we did billboards. I think this person's fixed his teeth. He had a gap tooth. I think we had no choice but to put out what we had,
right,
in the hopes that somebody looks at that and goes, oh my God, that is my ex-husband. That is my neighbor. And we go find him, we swab him, we get a match. We swabbed so many people in this case. We probably spent $50,000 at least just on testing DNA swabs. And no match, no hit. So I think we have, over the years, have educated him. He's become a little more sophisticated in his offending. And I think once we know who he is, we're going to look back and there's going to be a trail of victims in his past.
Wow. I think about Nicole's mom, It's still no answers for her. It's been more than, you're talking 1995 and still no answers for Nicole's mom.
Yeah, I never tell victims' families, I know what you're feeling.
No.
I always say I can't imagine, and nor do I ever want to, feel what you're feeling. All I can tell you is I've been with families that have gone through this. So I'm familiar with this process. I don't know what it feels like. But for me to tell a family member, we've solved your case, it's a good feeling for me knowing that they at least get some closure. I have not been able to do that for Nicole's mom. Her and I, again, have had a very tumultuous relationship, and we're fine. We're finally at a place where, she appreciates the effort I put in. I don't feel like I've given her what she needs yet, so I'm a little bit disappointed. Like, am I missing something? I mean, these things go through my head. Even today, I'm like, is there something else I could have done? Is there more that I haven't learned about yet? So I always question, if I can solve these other cases, why can't I solve this case? But again, we got something going right now. I'm not even working right now, but I'm still advising on this case, and there is some hope that this will prove to be what we need to put this case to rest. And I'm hoping I can make that call, to her and say, I need to meet you, and come and knock on her door and sit with her and tell her, look, get ready, it's coming, but we got them.
I just to think about that moment gives me chills.
Yeah.
I mean, wow.
Yeah, she's a wonderful woman, and she deserves it. And I hope, she's not old. I mean, she's going to be around for a while. Her mother's going to be here for a while, but I want her to enjoy like whatever time she has left on this earth at peace, and not put this behind her. And I want to get this guy off the streets. Like, I want this guy to pay for what he did, not just to Nicole, but to this other victim as well,
right.
And other victims that I'm sure are going to surface.
Yeah. Well, it's no secret that we're seeing recently cold cases are being solved throughout the country because of new techniques related to genealogy and DNA. And so that is really, I feel like I want to tell anybody related to a cold case, the the bad guys out there, I'm thinking you're shaking in your boots right now.
They should be, and man, I don't want to give too much away on this podcast, but, we are getting to a place where it's really going to be hard for you to hide, and if anybody's listening to this that is a criminal, you better just get your shit together. I'm sorry, because there's not much else you're going to be able to do, because we're coming. Like, technology is catching up with you, from your phones to cell towers to radar to like GPS to DNA to everything. So you know what? Get a job and stop offending. So if that makes anybody change their mind or get help or counseling, hopefully it will. But it is becoming increasingly difficult for people to get away with stuff. We're hoping technology can help us with this case.
So having said that, Vinny, I want to ask you, there's been, what would you say to people who criticize, these new techniques that are being used to solve cold cases?
Ask the mother who finally gets closure. Ask the husband whose wife's murder hasn't been solved for 10 years, or whose daughter was raped and finally they have, their day in court. They could answer that question better than me. If you want to criticize anything, put their shoes on for 1 minute and see how that feels. I don't have an answer for that. They would.
Yeah. I think when we talk about your career, and you've had a very long career, one of the most memorable cases that you're associated with, God, it's memorable for me too, because that was my first week, literally my first week at America's Most Wanted, March 2005. Courthouse shootings.
Oh, yeah.
That was March 2005.
Sure was.
It was March 2005.
Brian Nichols, yeah.
I mean, I think everybody here in Atlanta remembers that day. It was a crazy, I just happened to be in town shooting for America's Most Wanted. It's my first week. And all of a sudden I hear they're like locking down downtown.
Yeah.
It's on lockdown.
Yeah. That was.
Take us back to that, because some people outside of Atlanta are not familiar with that case.
Right. So this particular defendant, his name is Brian Nichols, was on trial for rape. And he had had been through trial for like a week or so, and the jury was hung. They could not come to a decision on the rape charge, so they declared a mistrial. And Judge Roland Barnes was the judge and immediately instructed the state to strike a new jury and let's get ready for another trial. Brian Nichols being transported to the courtroom. There's a holding cell in the back of the courthouse. Managed to assault the deputy that was taking him from the cage to the courtroom, get her keys, get a gun in the lockbox, and had a very elaborate plan that he had hatched out and very meticulous, and I'll get to that in a minute, and basically walked into the courtroom and walked right up to Judge Barnes and shot him in the side of the head and killed him.
Just like that? Just
like that. In the middle of the judge was having a hearing on a civil case prior to having the criminal case start, and then just leveled the gun over at the court reporter who, if anything, the court reporter, her name was Julie Brandau, was there for his benefit. She's recording everything that happens. She recorded everything that happened at his mistrial. So for any retrial or an appeal, her record of the trial is what would be used to help him in a defense. And he shot and killed her and then ran out of the courtroom. And mind you, this is after, first he goes in the back and he takes everybody in the judge's chambers hostage, takes another deputy's gun. So now he's got two guns, handcuffs that deputy, then goes into the courtroom, kills the judge, kills the court reporter, and then runs out of the courthouse and then runs through, across the bridge to the other side of the courthouse. And he's running down the stairs, and then alarms are going off. The courthouse is on lockdown, and the deputies for the sheriff's department are in full, alert mode, looking for this defendant that this, really, they know that this shot and killed a judge. And he goes down a stairwell and he's heading down towards the first floor of the courthouse.
He's trying to get out.
He's escaping. Hoyt Teasley, who's a deputy, Fulton County Sheriff's Department, sees him and chases him down the stairwell. Brian Nichols makes it out of the courthouse on a side street exit, gets to the middle of the street. Hoyt Teasley comes out of the exit, draws his weapon, and Brian Nichols starts firing at him. And actually struck the gun out of Deputy Teasley's hand and destroyed the gun and continued firing and shot and killed Deputy Teasley. Brian Nichols then goes on.
So we're talking 3 people dead.
He's now killed 3 people in a matter of 10 minutes. Less than 10 minutes.
And the other deputy, when he escaped initially, he'd
beaten her right to inches of death. She was beaten so badly that they thought she was shot in the head. That's how much blood and trauma was to her face and head. But she was beaten with his fist. And she suffered permanent brain damage from that. And from that point on, he then, went to a parking garage and carjacked somebody and put somebody in the trunk. And I'm just going to kind of go fast through this, and went somewhere else and, carjacked somebody else, a tow truck, and then went here and then, pushed somebody like.
I mean, it's a frantic time. We have to imagine, like everything is on lockdown, but somehow he makes it out. His mind is working in like a machine. It's like carjack, victim, move, put a coat on. He took his jacket off. He put his shirt off. Now he's just got a coat on and some khakis. He looks like a businessman. He finds his way into a MARTA train and he gets a train all the way to Buckhead, North Atlanta, the shopping district of Buckhead. So he escapes through a MARTA train.
He gets out. Now I'm there. I'm brought in because from homicide standpoint, I'm in the courthouse now. I'm processing the courtroom scene. I got the judge here. He's got a shell casing on his robe. He's dead. I got Julie Brandau under the desk, dead from a gunshot wound to the head. You got Hoyt Teasley, who was transported to Grady, who died once he got to Grady. And all of these, things are going through my head. Meanwhile, I'm listening to the radio chatter, and it's just chaotic. I think he's in the garage. I think he's here. Wait a minute. We got a tow truck driver that was carjacked. We got a victim that was beaten in the head that was in the trunk of a car. He was an AJC reporter for our local paper.
I forgot about that.
Yeah,
this is like unraveling while you're on the scene. It's still going on.
Crazy. And I'm still doing my homicide stuff. I'm handling this scene, and I know how important the scene is. I see a lens of an eyeglass in the jury box. Okay, that was the judge's eyeglass lens. It popped out when he got shot. And I'm just trying to paint this picture of what he did, all this carnage. And then I look down at the court reporter's desk, and I see, as most court reporters do, they also audio record the proceedings. And I'm like, no way. It was all on tape.
Oh, man.
You can hear him come in. You can hear the civil lawyers scream. You can hear a commotion, and you can hear the gunshots. I could actually hear Judge Barnes getting killed. I could hear Julie getting killed. It was bizarre. It was surreal. And I'm hearing all this chatter. We got him. We don't have him. We don't know where he's at. Helicopters are flying around. It's just crazy. It's crazy. But I'm still doing my job, right? So
This is like a scene from one of those movies with what's the bald head guy's name? Like,
Jason Statham?
I don't
or,
know, but just like one of, I don't know, like a what's the guy?
This could listen. They made a movie out of this. I would never want to, them to do that. But this was a real life drama, tragedy unfolding right before my eyes. I worked, 15, 16 hours that day. Finally went home. The next morning, I get up. No, my phone rings. I don't get up. My phone wakes me up.
Well, hang on. Before you get to that next day, so he's at the Martis. He gets away through the Martis.
Well, we learned that later. We learned that later.
No, but you learned later about the next victim because the agent.
That's where I'm going.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Go ahead. So the next day.
The next day, I wake up in the morning from a phone call, and they're like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I'm like, I'm just, I'm just sleeping. I didn't get home till whatever. And I'm like, you're not gonna believe this, man. We've got a dead federal agent in Buckhead, and the casings that we found next to his body look identical to the casings from the courthouse shooting, which are very unique because they belong to the Fulton County Sheriff's Department. Remember, he took two deputies' guns. And I'm like, man, you gotta be shitting me. No way. Like, what are you doing? I said, I'm on the way. So I put my suit back on, I drive to Buckhead, and I go to Cantor Drive, which is right off of Lennox Road in Buckhead. It's surrounded by federal agents. All the alphabets are there: FBI, DEA, ATF. This particular victim in 2005 was a customs. This is before customs integrated with ICE. David Wilhelm. So Detective Calhoun, who's a partner of mine in homicide, because it's a new day, a new case, he was next in the rotation. This is his case. So I said, listen, I'm going to work this with you because more than likely this is related. So we entered into this house that was under construction, and we learned that Agent Wilhelm knew how to do tile, and in order to save some money in the construction of his home, decided he was going to tile his own bathrooms. And he would go there after work, have a utility light with a extension cord. His white truck was parked out there, and he was laying tile. Well, his truck was not there. His gun was gone. His badge was missing. And he's laying downstairs, not upstairs, where the work was being done, in an unconstructed, what would have been a den up to the house, laying on his back with a gunshot wound in his thumb and his chest. And he's dead, 2 shots. And I'm like, this smells like Brian Nichols to me. So ironically, as we're trying to piece this case together, and I'm helping Calhoun process the scene, in my mind, my mind works. I multitask in my head. You may not know it, but I'm making measurements. Yeah. But I'm thinking like I'm playing chess. I'm like, okay, if this is Brian Nichols, where could he be right now? What is he doing in Buckhead? Why did he come here? Does he know somebody on the street? Okay, what was that, 7.3 inches? I'm writing that down, okay? Oh, by the way, he's got a gunshot wound to his thumb. I wonder if Brian Nichols has a girlfriend that lives in the neighborhood. My head is consumed.
Spinning.
It's like if you could get inside my head, it would look like, if you poured a thing of Campbell's soup into a bowl and all those little potatoes and carrots, are all just moving around.
Wow.
But it makes sense,
yeah.
Right? I get a call, and like, you're not going to believe this. Brian Nichols has just been taken into custody in Gwinnett County. I said, what? They're like, yep, Gwinnett's got him, and the FBI has him in custody.
So that's like, for people who are not from Atlanta, that's about 30 minutes away, let's just call it.
30 minutes away.
The suburb of Atlanta.
Right. And
totally different area.
And they're like, and let me guess, there's a white truck there, right? They're like, absolutely. Agent Wilhelm's truck.
So he had taken
we knew.
Wilhelm's truck.
We knew. Okay, so he killed Agent Wilhelm, no doubt. So Detective Mark Cooper, who was the lead detective on the courthouse shootings, myself, Detective Nicole Redlinger, and some other detectives were assisting him on that. Mark Cooper is also now at Agent Wilhelm's home. So what I learned was the FBI wants to bring him to their office in Atlanta, bring Brian Nichols to their office. So Detective Cooper said, hey, if you could, how about you meet the FBI with Nichols at their office? I'm going to stay here and help Calhoun finish this crime scene. So I drive to the FBI office. And when I pull into the FBI office in Atlanta, if anybody's from here, it used to be, and it may still be on Century Boulevard, northwest Atlanta. It's surrounded by a fence, the building, the back area where they have a processing site. Mm-hmm. And it was, I think, every media outlet that you could possibly think of with long-range cameras, helicopters. It looked like the Pope was going to visit Atlanta. That's how much media was out there. And I said, oh, man, this is not good.
Wow. We
don't need this kind of exposure because this is still a murder and we still have some work to do. The FBI brings him in. Actually, when I got there, he was already there.
Okay.
He had injured his hand, I think, and they were bandaging his hand up, and he cut that jumping the fence, I think. And I quickly realized that there's so much going on here. We got to keep. Now, my chief was there. The head of the FBI office was there. The head of the local customs office was there. All these people, all these chiefs, right? And not enough Indians, the proverbial too many chiefs and not enough Indians making decisions. And I had to remind my chief, I said, Chief, this is a murder. Plain and simple. This is an Atlanta murder. You got to let us do our job. We can't get wrapped up with all this other stuff.
Because to go back, this is high profile, at the max. We've got a judge shot. It's a courthouse shooting. There's multiple people killed, possibly tied to this killing of a federal agent. We may or may not know that at that point, but it's a crazy scene, top to bottom.
It's nuts. It was overwhelming, and I realized, I said, okay, he needs to be interviewed just like any other homicide suspect would be interviewed. So I said, okay, he's here, and the FBI asserted some authority. Now, I will say this, they were instrumental in providing resources to help find Brian Nichols, and, I'm not knocking the FBI. I was unaware of this law, but there's a law that forbids anyone under indictment from possessing a firearm. And because Brian Nichols was under indictment for the previous rape charge, they got involved. They opened up a case in order to allocate resources. And because of that, they now didn't want to let him leave their office. So now I'm like, wait a minute, time out. Whoa, Mr. FBI man, let me explain that this is an Atlanta murder. You guys don't investigate homicides. We do. Appreciate your help. We love that you guys helped us catch him. And you're more than welcome to help us along the way. But we need to interview him. Nobody else. This is a murder that occurred in the city limits of Atlanta. We are the people that investigate homicides. So therefore, we have one opportunity before he goes to the jail to talk to him. It has to happen now. And they say, okay, well, you can do it here. No, we can't do it here because the FBI doesn't videotape their interviews. We do. I wanted to make sure that whatever this man says, if he said anything, it's on video and audio. Not notes that I wrote down that he said this. I want whoever watches this to hear it from his mouth. Right. So the decision was made to transport him to Atlanta PD headquarters. And if you could have filmed the procession, It looked like we were transporting $1 trillion.
Wow.
Like we had emptied the U.S. Treasury and we're moving it from point A to point B. It was SWAT, armored vehicles. And I said, okay, this is, again, we're making this bigger than, it's not that it's not a big deal, but for him and what I need to do to interview this guy, I got to downplay this thing.
Right.
I got to downplay, because right now, I already know this guy's a narcissist. I already know it's all about him.
Before you've even talked to him.
I haven't even said hello to him.
Well, can I back up to, can you tell me how he was caught in Gwinnett?
So that's an interesting story.
Because obviously he leaves.
And right. He leaves the agent's house and he's driving around. And we learned this later through what he told me and what this witness said. Her name was Ashley Smith. He's driving around Gwinnett County just trying to figure out where to hide out. He pulls into an apartment complex and he sees a young lady, a white female, walking out of her apartment 2 or 3 in the morning. And he realizes this is a good... and I want to back up. There was another thing that happened. Prior to entering Agent Wilhelm's home, Brian Nichols was across the street in an apartment complex of where Agent Wilhelm was killed.
Okay.
And was still trying to figure out what to do, apparently, and sees a woman walking out, a black female with a laundry basket of her apartment, and tries to force her in with a gun. Her boyfriend, and to this day, we're not sure why he didn't shoot him and kill him, sees what's going on and tries to intervene, and Brian Nichols beats him in the head with a gun and then runs away. So we already have a 911 call that's going out. And within 10 minutes of that incident, Agent Wilhelm is dead because he runs across the street. He sees the light on because all he's got on is this house under construction. There's one little light in the corner. He sees a truck. He knows somebody's in there. He probably thinks it's a worker, not knowing this guy's a federal agent. It's my theory that Agent Wilhelm, realized once he forced him downstairs at gunpoint, try to grab the gun, because I believe his gun was probably not with him, like on his person. And I think that's why Agent Wilhelm has a gunshot wound to his thumb. Right. I think he tried to disarm, which, if you think you're about to get killed, that's what any law enforcement officer would have done or should have done. So to this day, I think he was acting. And he already knew, because Agent Wilhelm got a call from his wife that day saying, I don't know if you heard, honey, but there's a shooting at the courthouse. There's a guy in the run. He's dangerous. Be careful. He knew that. And he also got alerted by his agency that, hey, this is what's happened today. So I think the minute Brian Nichols surfaced, he knew that's who that person was. So fast forward, he's now in Gwinnett. He drives away in his truck. He sees Ashley Smith. He's in her apartment. And that's an interesting story in and of itself, because Ashley Smith, and I can go on for hours about that. I'll give you a quick one. Basically talked Brian Nichols into surrendering. And so much so, there was a point where Ashley Smith had the opportunity to get away and chose not to. He needed to hide Agent Wilhelm's truck and drives it from a couple spaces in front of her door and wants to dump it and has Ashley Smith follow him in her own car. And there's some debate. People debate this. I get asked all the time, well, he knew her and there was a connection. I can tell you with absolute certainty there was no connection.
She was just a random.
She was random. And God bless her. Like she was going through some things at the time. She had some troubles, and I'm not going to tell her story. She's already told it. She could have drove away. She could have veered off and let him keep going. And the reason she said she didn't, I interviewed her later, was because she felt she felt she can talk him into surrendering, because she's already started to build this rapport. And if she pulled away and called, or he saw her pulling away, that would cause him,
who knows what would have
to
happened.
drive away, and she thought someone else would get killed. So she followed him, and then he got back in her car and she drove him back to her apartment. And then basically was able to call Gwinnett County.
So then she gets him back to the apartment and they basically talk it out.
She talks it out. They prayed, and she convinces him to surrender. And that's how he was caught. But that's an incredible story in and of itself. And I think she's written a book, You can Google her, Ashley Smith, and you can read all about her experience with Brian Nichols. But we fast forward, and we're at the FBI now, and I'm like, okay, we got to bring him back. And I'm like, I have one condition. My chief is standing next to me. The head of the FBI office is standing there. The
Sounds
SWAT
like everybody
team
is standing there.
Yeah, I'm in a suit. I'm like, look, I'm just a homicide cop. Like, I get it, but I know what I need to do. I said, I need to ride with him. I got to sit next to this guy on the way to APD. So they agreed. So I've got like a SWAT armored truck in front of me. I got 2 agents in the Suburban. Brian Nichols is shackled in the seat next to me like Hannibal Lecter. I'm sitting to his right. He hasn't said a word to me. I haven't said a word to him. I got 4 SWAT trucks behind me. We're flanked on each side by SWAT trucks. There's a helicopter following us. And as we're driving, we finally get on the interstate, people were pulling over to the side because they knew what just happened, and they were clapping. And he looks at me, and he goes, "Is that all for me?" And I said, "Yeah, it's all for you." And he's like, "What's your name?" I'm like, "Detective Velazquez." "Vince, you can call me Vince, though." I said, "I prefer that." He said, Velazquez. And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "I bet people mispronounce your name all the time." And I go, "Son of a bitch." I said, "This dude's trying to get in my head." "Okay. Chess. All right. You just moved your bishop out of the way. You want to get your queen out. No worries. I know what to do." So we're playing mental chess now.
Inside Crime is brought to you by Deterra. The Deterra drug deactivation system is an independently tested, safe, and environmentally sound solution that permanently deactivates, destroys, and disposes of unneeded pills, patches, liquids, creams, and films right at home. Be part of the solution to reduce drug abuse. Learn more at deterrasystem.com.
So we're playing mental chess. Now, people laugh at me because there's a running joke about the McDonald's number 3.
I know this story.
Yeah.
Go ahead. It's great.
So Cindy Myers was the agent in the front seat, and Joe Fonseca was driving from the FBI. I knew Cindy because I was also a hostage negotiator, and Cindy was for the FBI. Our paths crossed on some negotiations. So Joe Fonseca I didn't really know. And I know they're like figuring out what I'm doing because we're talking, and I'm like, he's trying to get in my head. I'm like, all right, he's trying to get in my head, so what do I do? Oh, no worries. I know how to play this guy. So I go on my radio and I call my lieutenant, Randall Robinson, at the time was the homicide commander, and I said, "Hey, Lou, you there?" He's like, "Yeah, can you go to a surveillance channel?" And we have like a talk around channel on the radios that only homicide can listen to. And I said, "Hey, Lou, listen, man, it's been a long morning. I haven't had a chance to eat. Would you mind sending somebody, a recruit or secretary, somebody to McDonald's for me? I just want to grab something to eat before I get wrapped up in the rest of the day." And I'm like, shit, I hope he gets this, And he's smart, So there's silence, and I'm like, oh my God, please get this. Please, please, please understand what I'm trying to do here.
Because what you're trying to do is catch, you want him to catch on. You haven't talked about this before. It's not really
it's
about.
Not rehearsed.
It's not really about the McDonald's.
No, and I didn't even eat that shit. I'm going to be honest with you. But I knew what I was, my plan was, in place. But it's silent. Like, I'm like, oh my God.
Like, oh no.
It's like Jeopardy, like, Alex Trebek's waiting for the answer. And I'm like, come on, man, please catch what I'm doing here.
He could have easily said, "What are you talking about? See you later." Bye.
Yeah. So he says, "Yeah, no problem, V, I got you." I said, oh God, thank God. And I said, "Yeah, just what I need. I need a number 3 supersized with a sweet tea." He said, "Okay, I got it. Number 3 supersized with a sweet tea." And then I just put my radio down. And I remember looking over at Joe Fonseca, and he looks back at me like, "What? Can I cuss on this thing?" Yeah. He's like, "What the fuck?" Like, that's the look he had. Like, this guy's ordering fucking McDonald's?
We're in the middle of something here.
So I said, I just looked at him like, "Just drive. Don't worry about what I'm doing." And I looked over.
And what's Brian Nichols doing?
Well, he's looking at me like the same way. He's like, "What the fuck?" Like, man, wait a minute. I just killed 3 people. And you're ordering 4 people, and you're ordering McDonald's? That's the look he had on his face. That's not what he said. So I just let it roll for like 30 seconds of silence. Now, if anybody knows, if you can really try this, like there's really some awkwardness in silence. So for 30 seconds intentionally, I just sat there, my hands on my lap, and just looked straight ahead. Like, and then I saw like Fonseca look back at me, and Cindy look back at me, and I could tell he's looking at me because I could see it through my peripheral, and I'm like, I'm just gonna look straight ahead and not say a word. So after 30 seconds, I'm like, hey man, you hungry? And he's like, man, I'm starving. I'm like, you want some McDonald's? And he's like, you get McDonald's? I said, yeah, man. What do you mean? It's no big deal. What do you want? I'll do the same thing. All right. I call my lieutenant, say, Lieutenant, go back to surveillance. Hey, can you make that 2? He's like, 2 what? I said, 2 number 3s. I said, you want sweet tea? He's like, yeah, sweet tea. Exactly. 2 number 3s, supersized with sweet tea. No worries, V, I got you. So if you ever watch the interview tape, when we first sit down in the interview room, it's me and Brian Nichols just sitting there eating number 3s, supersized, with a sweet tea, talking about our kids. I haven't Mirandized him yet because I'm not asking him any questions about what happened. And we're just getting to know each other.
You're just having a meal, sharing a meal.
Because I'm like, okay, asshole, you want to get in my head? All right. I'm the master at this shit. Let's play. You know, people, and trust me, like, when we get up to the interview area, here we go. It's alphabet soup again. We got DEA, we got FBI, we got ATF, we got the supervisor for the customs. I get it, but I still got a job to do. The FBI had a condition. They said, you can interview him. Now, you're in my house, by the way. We're at APD headquarters at Homicide, and I'm like, okay, Chief, I got to play by these rules? He goes, yeah, man, I'm sorry, he's in their custody. I said, okay, no worries. We got to have somebody in the room with you from the FBI. I said, okay, no worries. Now, I don't remember if I said it or they chose Cindy Myers, but it was Cindy Myers. I'm like, we're good. I know Cindy, she's cool.
She's going to let you do your thing.
Nah, man, Cindy gets it.
Yeah.
She understands what's going on. So, you know, and again, people don't realize it's a mental chess game, and we got people with long rifles on the other side of the rock. You know, this guy's a dangerous man, and for 30 minutes, I can only imagine people are like, what the fuck is he doing in there?
Having lunch.
Me, right?
You're having lunch.
And my people were like, listen, just let him do his thing. This is what he does. He's good at this. It's okay. You know, it's like, you know, you can't finesse, you can't rush, you know, an interview with a homicide suspect. It doesn't matter who he killed. It doesn't matter. You know, if Lee Harvey Oswald was sitting in the room back when Kennedy was killed, it would be the same thing. You don't just run in there and just ask him what happened. You got to get this guy to trust you. So, long story short, in the interviews, it's been published. I mean, I think you can get some excerpts of it online, the actual video. You know, and I would be here all day if I told you everything that he said in the interview, but I'll just give you a couple tidbits. When we finally get through Miranda, his you know, rights to an attorney, which he agrees to speak to me without, the first thing he says, the very first thing, which was chilling to me, he said, I first want to say, and this isn't verbatim, that I want to send my condolences to the families of those killed in combat. So he's referring to his victims as those killed in combat. So I already knew what I was in store for.
Right now, I want to play just a small portion of Vince's interview with Brian Nichols right after he was arrested. In this clip, Nichols describes the moment he shot Judge Roland Barnes and court reporter Julie Brandow. The audio is a little hard to understand, so I'm going to tell you exactly what you're going to hear. He says, I engaged the target, which was Roland Barnes. I engaged the secondary target, which was the court stenographer.
I engaged the target, which was Roland Barnes. I engaged the secondary target, which was the court stenographer. Okay. I proceeded out of the courtroom. Okay. across the bridge. There was another deputy that was running across the bridge that saw me on the torch. Right.
When I first heard this clip, I was surprised at how soft-spoken Nichols was in the interview. To me, he sounds calm, very clinical, and emotionless. Let's get back to our interview with Vince.
And in the interview went in a direction where he is justifying his actions based on some false narrative of him, the free labor at the Fulton County Jail, how inmates are treated, the conditions there. There may have been some legitimacy to that. I'm not saying there isn't, but we all knew this wasn't about that. This was about his girlfriend that he was accused of raping. This was about him feeling betrayed by her, and there were some other issues that happened prior to the rape in their relationship, and him knowing that he's about to go back on trial for rape. It has nothing to lose, and almost like a last shebang, so to speak. But he started to go down, and I'll give you a little, one more piece of this interview that I think was crucial, and then we can move on. Is I noticed that he started to go down this road where he was alluding to him being having some type of mental illness. When you're talking in technical terms or military terms, I advanced and I took out target 1 and I advanced to target 2, and then, the deputy engaged me. He was an offensive target, and this isn't verbatim. I'm just
Right.
kind of in those terms. And I'm like, what the hell is this guy talking about? Okay, all right, I get it. One crucial piece to this whole thing, and I made it a point to let him know that I was in the military. I said, well, I served my country for 7 years. I know about the mission. And he kept talking in those terms, the mission. Mission critical, mission crucial. I said, okay. There was a point on the bridge when he killed the judge in the court report, and he's running across the bridge. So the courthouse is the old side of the courthouse and the new side of the courthouse. He's running from the old side, which is where Judge Barnes' chambers and courtroom was, to the new side. It's a bridge on the 7th floor that connects the two, a footbridge. As he's crossing the footbridge, this is a fact, now he's dressed in khaki pants and a shirt. He's got both guns now in his front pockets. You can't see him. So he just looks like somebody attending court that day, but the deputies are scrambling in the courthouse because the alarms are going off. Crazy. They know what's going on, radio chatter, and he encounters the deputy on the bridge. The deputy stops him and says, what's going on? He goes, I don't know, man. There's somebody shooting over there. That deputy then runs past him.
Wow. So
fast forward back to the interview with me. So he's coming with all these terms of the mission. I got to complete the mission. This is, it's all about, the treatment of prisoners, and I wanted to free them. I was going to crash a truck into the gates and free all the prisoners and all this stuff. This mission that he was on, that, mission critical in military terms. So I said, man, you and I are a lot alike. I said, we're similar in age. I have a son. You have a son. He worked out at LA Fitness. I worked out at LA Fitness. I said, I have friends that are, I don't just have friends that are cops. And I said, would you be friends with a cop? And he's like, of course, yeah. And I said, so in the world of possibilities, you think you and I could have been friends at some point? Let's just say none of this ever happened, right? But knowing me and my personality now, do you think we could be friends? He said, yeah, I think we could. I said, me too. I do too. I said, you're very, easy to talk to. You're articulate. I said, those are people I'm drawn to. And he's like, okay, well, I appreciate that, or something to that effect. And I said, well, let me ask you this question. I said, let's just say we were friends. You and I. Brian Nichols worked at wherever you did, smart guy. Vince Velazquez, Atlanta police officer. And then this happened. And I was the person that you encountered on that bridge. Not the deputy, it was me. And I'm like, whoa. Brian, I can't let you pass me. What would you have done? I said, would you have killed me? And he said, no.
He said, no.
He said, it would have been over. So that right there, you're not crazy. If you're crazy and it's all mission critical, his answer should have been, man, I'd have shot you right between the eyes because it's mission critical. Mm-hmm. So that right there, proved that this is all bullshit. It's all bullshit. It's like, you're making this up to like create this. I had to do it because think about it. He's smart enough to know that what he's saying is not reasonable. So then later he can say, man, and that's exactly what his defense was.
Right.
So when we go to trial, it was called delusional compulsion is the psychiatric term they used. And I'm not sure if that, I honestly, to this day, I don't know if that ever came up in court when I gave him that alternative scenario. Mm-hmm. May have. But I felt, when I talked to the DA, and they were like, that was good because it shows that he has rational thought process, that the mission's not as important as a friendship. Because if you're crazy, I'd have shot my mother because the devil or the forces that are making me do this tell me I have to because the mission is critical.
The mission's
He
critical.
didn't say that.
Let's talk about what's next for you. I mean, so much success with ATL Homicide, and you've got so much going on. I'm just so thrilled for you.
Thank you. Honestly, like I tell my son, I said, like, we can have a plan in life, and you're like, hey, this would be great. Like, what would be your dream job? And then when you get there, I don't know if I ever envisioned a dream job until I found it. Like, I never, as a kid, I was like, I didn't want to be a homicide detective. You know what I mean? I had different motivators for me as a kid because I came from a very different childhood, of crime, and not me personally, but like family members and drug addiction. And so my motivation was to get out of that, just, man, I just need to I need my own, can I have my own bathroom would be great. So I remember getting my own place for the first time. Like, man, I have my own bathroom.
I got my own space.
Yeah. Like, imagine growing up, like, with a community bathroom on a floor in a tenement building in New York City where you and all your neighbors use the same bathroom, and then moving to Florida with my grandparents where there's one tiny bathroom for 4 of us.
Right.
So, but when I think back at my career and I go, wow, like, I became a cop. I've always kind of, as a young adult in the military, gravitated towards that. And I started feeling drawn into that. I made the move and I did that. And then homicide, I'm like, man, I think I was meant for this. I didn't know it, but it found me. Maybe that's how the universe works. I don't know. But I'm here. Quinn, my partner in the show, my partner for 15 years in homicide, me and this guy, not one time in our career ever have tested to become a supervisor. Not once. We didn't want to. Because you become a supervisor, you got to transfer out of the unit.
You're having too much.
Yeah, man, we like, this is what we're meant to do. So I never became a sergeant or lieutenant or, who knows? Maybe I would have been chief. I didn't want to be chief. He didn't want to be a sergeant, lieutenant, or captain. So when I talked to my son and I said, hey, man, like, pay your bills, be comfortable, get a job, find what you like doing, all right, and then from there, grow on that. I never imagined 3 years ago, right, that I would retire early. I would have this opportunity with my business. I have a consulting business that's very successful, and I have some very good clients. And that because of the path that I took with using the media, with you starting back in 2000 to 2001 or 2002, bringing my partner Quinn into like, hey, man, you got to use the media, man. You got to get in front of that camera. To doing, cold case files, doing America's Most Wanted, doing First 48, that we would build, and at the same time, building the relationship I have with David Quinn and getting better as partners. Like, and this just like, it's like magic. It's like David Copperfield doing a magic trick and you walk away and you're like, I don't care how he did it. It was so good and you feel good about it. That's how we work. That's how we are together. And then fast forward to ATL Homicide, where this opportunity came up, and you were instrumental in that. You were part of that. And then here we are, like from the day we sat in my living room, which you remember, because you were there, and we
Put
shot
it all together.
Yeah, we shot the sizzle reel, and we were walking, we were talking, and like, again, the vision. Like in my mind, I'm like, hey, I don't know where this is gonna go. I don't know how this is gonna work, but you know what? If this is step one, it's not a bad step. Fast forward, you guys are doing your thing.
It's a real thing now. It's a real show. It has a real following.
At the end of the day, this is a TV show. That's all it is. But it's a representation of law enforcement, in our opinion, in a positive light. It's a representation of a family that struggled. It's a representation of a community that went through something, depending on what case it is. And it's a representation of a victim whose lives mattered, right?
Yeah. What are your goals and what do you want with the show?
You know, if we can be like pseudo ambassadors, so to speak, and show the public who are distrusting of the police, who feel left out, people from those communities that are disenfranchised, or communities that aren't getting the service from the police departments in wherever city you're from, St. Louis or Chicago or whatever, and say, hey, look, if these guys can get it, why can't you get it? So not just from the community standpoint, but also from other police departments. You know, if other police departments can say, hey, look, man, these guys have a good chemistry. Like, what can we do? I'm just making this up. Like, if we could inspire a community member to say, I'm going to like be a little more engaged and try and understand police officers a little bit better, because I know these guys get it. Or if a police officer or an agency says, hey, you know, maybe it's inspiring to me to try and change the way I do things or be different, then that's success for us.
Yeah.
And again, we're coming from a law enforcement standpoint where people aren't used to engaging people, cops, like we engage people as human beings and like regular guys. Like, I got the same problems you have. You know, I have a son that's in college that graduated recently. I have a brother that went to prison. I have a father that spent many years in prison. Yeah, I had my parents were addicted to drugs when I was a kid. So we all come from different backgrounds, but that doesn't mean you can't, you know, you don't have to be a victim and can perpetuate that cycle. You know, there's a way out of this thing. You use it not as a crutch, you use it as a ladder to pull yourself out of it. Because a crutch is something you just got to keep walking with, right?
Yep. And
if you got to take that crutch off sometimes and start walking on the foot that hurts to get better. So if we could do that, that's wonderful.
There's a lot on the horizon. I think you are just in your prime right now. We're barely getting started. I tell you that all the time, and I'm excited to see what's next for you.
Thank you. I agree with you. Yeah, we're excited too. We're excited to see what's next.
Well, thank you for coming on Inside Crime, and I would like to have you back because we have so much more to talk about.
Oh yeah, we could talk for days.
Yeah,
for sure. I'll be happy to come back.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And that's it for this episode of Inside Crime. I'm your host, Angeline Hartman. For more information related to this episode, including the unsolved murder of Nicole Smith, you can go to our website, insidecrime.com. Feel free to drop us an email anytime, and you can always reach out to me on Twitter. My handle is @AngelineDC. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed our show. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss an episode of Inside Crime.